Good evening and welcome. Hong Kong's anti-graft body finally has an official head of operations and a new deputy commissioner. It's a dual role that Ricky Yao has been appointed to. Caleb Loom reports.
Ricky Yao was close to leaving the Independent Commission Against Corruption in 2016. Yet 3 hours after the ICAC announced his departure, he withdrew his request to quit. In the past 2 years, he served as the acting head of operations, overseeing the anti-graft body's largest department. The position needs to be renewed by the ICAC commissioner every 3 months. Not anymore. Today, authorities announced the 53-year-old has been appointed to head of operations and deputy commissioner. He has served more than 20 years at the ICAC, having joined the anti-corruption agency as an investigator. ICAC Commissioner Simon Pei said he has every confidence in Yao's leadership. The ICAC has seen turbulent years following the departure of senior officials, including Rebecca Lee. She served only a year as acting head of operations, which fueled speculation whether that's related to her probe into then Chief Executive Leung Chun-ying's $15 million payment from Australian firm UGL. Caleb Leung, TVB News.
Standby signal number 1 is still in force. The observatory says the chance of issuing the strong wind signal number 3 before midnight tonight is relatively low. Michelle Ngan reports.
Tropical storm Bebinca was about 210 kilometers away from Hong Kong at 5 p.m., having slightly edged closer to the Pearl River Delta region in the past few hours. It is forecast to move slowly and linger around the seas off the coast of western Guangdong, yet its track is relatively erratic.
Unless Bebinca intensifies significantly or adopt a more northeasterly track closer to Pearl River Delta region, the chance of issuing the strong wind signal number 3 before midnight tonight is relatively low.
The standby signal number 1 has remained in effect for 4 days, which is the third longest in duration since 1977. Besides, the naming of Bebinca is 18 hours later than it is supposed to be. The observatory said the Japan Meteorological Agency is in charge of the job. Yet in Macau, winds are stronger and gustier than here in Hong Kong. Macau authorities issued a tropical cyclone alert and a signal number 3. They also said the chance of issuing the signal number 8 tomorrow morning is medium. Michelle An, TVB News.
Malaysian Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad says he will seek to cancel multi-billion-dollar Chinese-backed infrastructure projects that were signed by his predecessor. This as his government works to dig itself out of debt.
We don't think we need those 2 projects. We don't think they are viable. So if we can, we would like to just drop the projects. But if that cannot be done, we'll have to postpone it to the future where perhaps the need will arise.
Mahathir made the comments just days before he heads to Beijing for his first visit there since returning to power in an electoral upset 3 months ago. The 93-year-old leader says he wants to maintain good relations with China and welcomes its investment as long as the projects benefit Malaysia. Mahathir took his toughest stance yet on Chinese-backed energy pipelines and a rail project along Malaysia's east coast. The deals were struck by his predecessor, Najib Razak, who's facing trial on multiple charges related to the alleged multi-billion-dollar looting of the 1MDB State Investment Fund. Najib drew Malaysia closer to China during his tenure. Beijing sees the multi-ethnic Southeast Asian country as a key part of its ambitious Belt and Road Initiative. Emerging market currencies sold off heavily and Asian stocks tanked as Turkey's lira plunged to an all-time low. This comes on concerns over the country's diplomatic rift with the United States and the risk of capital flight. The lira pared some of its losses after Turkey's central bank lowered reserve requirement ratios for banks. but the currency is still down more than 9% on the day at 6.97 per dollar. That's within spitting distance of the record low of 7.24 hit during early Asia trading hours. The lira was at 4.84 this time last month. Investors fear the lira's sell-off could send a ripple effect throughout the global markets, with the euro, the South African rand, and Mexico's peso already down to multi-year lows. Turkey's Interior Ministry says it is taking necessary legal measures against social media statements that create negative perceptions of the economy.
Leaders of the 5 countries that have coastlines on the Caspian Sea have agreed in principle on how to divide up the body of water. The deal signed in Kazakhstan ends more than 2 decades of tension. The accord established territorial water and fishing zones between Russia, Iran and 3 former Soviet republics, Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan and Turkmenistan. The Caspian Sea is the world's largest enclosed body of water. It's believed to have huge oil and natural gas resources. More discussions will be held to find a framework agreement to split up the energy resources. The nations have been at odds over the status of the sea since the breakup of the Soviet Union in 1991.
想打好個檸檬茶底，就要將阿薩姆紅茶、伯爵茶、錫蘭紅茶撞埋一齊，就係 Fuzy 3重茶底檸檬茶，全新手糖，3種甜度任你揀。
Welcome back to TVB News. A white nationalists rally in Washington, D.C. was met with massive opposition as counter-protesters far outnumbered those demonstrating at a Unite the Right event. Police had to use pepper spray to separate the two sides. Sonia Otero reports.
The white nationalist rally drew about 24 demonstrators compared with this. Hundreds of far-right counter-protesters clawing to spar with what they insist are white supremacists. As tempers flared among the far-left protesters, police were forced to douse them with pepper spray. Because the first rally last year in Charlottesville, Virginia ended in deadly violence, organizers were only granted permission to march across from the White House in Lafayette Square. To avoid any chance of violence, police beefed up their presence and did everything in their power to separate the two sides. But the leader of Unite the Right insists their movement has nothing to do with white supremacy. He says they're simply fighting to ensure white people do not become the minority in America.
I'm not a white supremacist, and I reject that message. I reject neo-Nazis. I reject the Ku Klux Klan. And in fact, I've made sure that I have people from my team who support civil rights for all people, not just white people, but everybody.
But these counter-protesters are adamant Unite the White stands for white supremacy and Nazism.
I need to stand up against hate, stand up against white supremacy, stand up against the forces that would take us back to a very, very dark place.
It's 2018 and we still have to fight against Nazis in America. That's ridiculous. Americans fought against Nazis.
While many in the crowd chanted, "Black Lives Matter," Kessler is adamant, white lives matter too.
I do think that there is enormous social stigma that is keeping us from having the same rights as other people.
Sonia Artero, TVB News.
Chief Executive Carrie Lam will head to Beijing tomorrow to attend the first meeting of the Greater Bay Area's leading group. The group consists of mainland officials and the chief executives of the Hong Kong and Macau special administrative regions. Vice Premier Han Zheng will likely chair the discussion. The Greater Bay Area is a cluster of 9 cities in Guangdong Province plus the 2 SARs. Carrie Lam returns to Hong Kong on Thursday ahead of a Facebook Live session on the following day to collect public views on her upcoming policy address. She will start live video streaming from 8 p.m. this Friday.
Medical news now, and researchers at City University have found something in our own bodies to help fight cancer. Caleb Bloom reports.
Red blood cells may someday be used as an ingredient to treat cancers. Researchers found that they could use the cells to create extracellular vesicles, or EVs, a carrier of cancer drugs and gene therapies. This kind of therapy is more effective as it can be custom-made for patients.
We can design the gene therapy specifically to those genes, and even when they have mutations, we can customize the system such that it can target the new mutations.
The EVs or carriers are essential for the therapy. Without these carriers, the drugs could be eliminated in the human body before it reaches the cancer cells. Current ways to make the carriers are expensive, but the new method is more cost-efficient.
If we compare to the same type of carriers from using other type of cells, then the EVs from red blood cells are 1,000 times higher yield in production, and it costs 100 times lower.
The method still requires further research before it reaches clinical testing stage. The research team expects to see it put into practical use after 5 years, the earliest.
The carriers can also be loaded with drugs to treat diseases other than cancer, with the research team quoting thalassemia as an example. Caleb Bloom, TVB News.
And that's the news.
Thanks for joining us.
Bye-bye.